Yeah, so we are on the live session. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, show us some emojis if the audience is able to see us, hear us. Thank you so much. So, a very good morning to everyone who joined here. I totally appreciate all of you because you're spending your Saturday morning trying to learn something, particularly about wellness in workplace. I think this itself is like a very good sign that people are interested to know more about not just wellness in workplace, but well-being overall. So let me quickly introduce myself and then the speakers. So I'm Meena. I head global HR at Airmeet, and I'm also the founder of the HR Folks community. This community, as such, is built particularly to aim at a lot of learning and creating a lot of events for HR folks to learn. So we kind of bring a lot of leaders across the globe who can share their knowledge and experiences and collectively benefit the HR community as such. So in that line, today we have our speakers, and I'm super glad to host them. So they will kind of touch on the significance of wellness and perhaps why they would do that is they themselves have been the champions of wellness, and they have made a mark in bringing wellness to the forefront of the org culture and HR success. So we have Gauri, who's the VP and head HR at IFFS. She's also a celebrated HR leader and recognized for her contribution by Jombe Tapai University, recently by LinkedIn as the most powerful profile of 2020. We also have Puneet, who's a co-founder of Your Dost. Your Dost is an emotional wellness coach. So Puneet is also recognized by Forbes 30 under 30, and he himself is a techie turned entrepreneur. While he's trying to change the way the world sees emotional well-being. So thanks for being here, Gauri and Puneet. I might want you to also take a few minutes to introduce something about yourself, particularly something about yourself that's not on LinkedIn, so that our team knows more about you. Gauri, you want to go first?
Thanks, Meena. Thanks for curating this platform and inviting me here. It's really pleasure connecting with you and Puneet and our audience. So most of it is already there on LinkedIn, but I would like to say that wellness has a totally different meaning for me. It's not about that physical thing or only mental thing. We will come to it. So for me, the mantra is passion with compassion, and that's where the whole wellness spectrum lies. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gauri. So we'd like to hear from Puneet.
Right. So I think, like Meena already mentioned, I think I'm not from this field. So I think to add more, other than what LinkedIn has, I think the idea of coming to entrepreneurship or doing something in emotional wellness was, I think, more personal and a journey for us as well. I think having worked with very different kind of cultures, from a hedge fund, which is financial institution, to a game developer, which is very, very informal. I think looking at those practices and somehow wanted to bring all of those together along with, I think, learning on the job. So I think one thing which I like about doing this is you get to learn every day and you get to implement that in your own lives and in your own company. And I think that's how we are looking, or at least that I also feel blessed to have played a role in somewhere in someone's life, maybe as part of your those.
Thank you so much, Puneet. I think for us to really understand a little more about you, I might want to run a quick rapid fire, ask this or that question to see what you would prefer, right? Just to break the ice and understand you guys a little further. So, okay, so sweet or savory, what would you prefer, Gauri?
Every.
Puneet?
Sweet.
Yeah, for me it's usually savory because sweet is nice and all that, but then it has its own health concerns, so it's savory.
Right. And I think I need to shift to that. Maybe looking at me, I would want to focus on saving and do out and sweet.
Okay, so pets or plants?
Plants.
Pets any day. That's my retirement plan as well.
So I am really like sandwiched between pets and plants because plants are my favorite. Now my kids want pets, so yeah, I think you will see me having both in some time. Yeah. So relaxed weekend or chores weekend?
Relaxed.
What do you want, Puneet?
Relax.
All right. So for me, I want to relax, but then if the chores are lying around there, it's really hectic. So one day chores and one day relax. So work-life balance or work-life integration?
Integration.
Puneet?
I think both are not. I think I generally don't believe in both words. I think it means very different for different people. So maybe integration is closer to what I believe in.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think integration is the word that's catching up.
Yeah.
But I don't think something like that really exists. If you want to bring the benefit, add more value, I mean, you're so inclined to take up that work because you're like really feeling the passion towards contributing, right? So you want to keep doing it. I was reading Gary V on LinkedIn sometime, and he's like, work-life balance is bullshit.
It is.
True
Right?
that.
Yeah. If you look at, we have somehow created norms which are very acceptable, right? And some of these concepts are very individualized. Like for me, I am right now in office because I wanted to come. I want to work for 10 hours, 12 hours on days, and there are days I don't want to. Someone else may not be, right? So I think a concept of work life or work, I think like we demonize people who are workaholic, right? Like why do we want to do that?
Yeah, somehow I also feel that if you found your ikigai,
Right.
so there's nothing
Yes.
called work life, right? It's
I
everything,
mean,
everything is one.
correct. How do you define work becomes very important here. So what you are doing, Mina, on a Saturday, it's not a work for you, right? And that's where it's not a burden also. So yeah, I think the definition absolutely is very important.
Yeah, but my house, they think, why are you doing this on a Saturday? So we'll have to really explain to them that passion really means something, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gauri and Puneet. I think we can quickly move on to understanding the topic that we are discussing today. I'm sure most of our HR folks would be looking forward to. What I would want to trigger first is a basic understanding of what wellness is, right? I'm not sure if everybody has the awareness of what wellness really means. I'd like to understand from your end, in your own definition, what wellness is. Puneet, if you can start and give us your own definition of what wellness means.
Right. So I think wellness is a very broad term. I think around 8 to 10 dimensions, from physical, emotional, social, occupational. I think a lot of them, right? Each of them have a role to play. Since I think we are focusing a lot more on the psychological aspect of wellness here, so for that I think I really like the way maybe WHO also has put it. I think wellness is more of, let's say in very layman terms, if I were to say, it's more of performing at an optimal level and contributing to the society as part of that work which you're doing. So that state that you achieve, which allows you to do that, is wellness. And then it has various dimensions to it, with emotional. I think more important, I would say physical, emotional. I think which are more concerned to a job, social and occupation. I think these four somehow impact that overall definition of wellness for me.
Got it. So psychologically, you see that what affects us in our personal level and in the workplace as an organization level, that is where most of the people seek understanding of wellness.
Right.
Everything else can be always looked up, understood, and stuff like that. But many a times you're not looking within. That's more important.
Right.
So Gauri, what would you add?
Yeah. So for me, it's all about happiness, containment. And Puneet touched upon it. I would just take a moment to explain the 8 dimensions because are equally important. So if it is emotional, we know how difficult it was during COVID period when we were not able to meet with each other, and that was the most important thing. So it's kind of ability to cope, like resilience is what we are talking about. So that's about emotional and also building that relationship, not only at work but at home as well. Then comes environmental, which also impacts us, but we generally don't, like you said, we don't look into and we don't try to identify what is bothering us. I remember my hostel days when I will have to enter my room, I'll dread this thought because my roommate will keep it very messy. So for me, what is there, what is in my surrounding equally impacts my well-being. And that's where even environmental puts in a lot of impact on me. Financial, we saw during this difficult times that even people at senior levels were not able to cope with financial situations. So this worry is kind of everywhere, and if we are able to manage this particular stress, we have that financial well-being as well. Intellectual, the kind of role that we are doing, whether we are able to find our talent, skills, and we are able to actually give back in terms of and get back also in terms of what we are doing and whether we are content with that. Occupational is quite similar, and physical we all know it's, but sleep is something which many people miss on, and sleep becomes a critical part when it comes to physical wellness. Social, that water cooler talks or that lunch room talks that we missed is critical, and we realized it very much during these difficult periods. And finally, spiritual also is equally important. My values, my beliefs will give me purpose. And if I'm not living by my values, I would not be feeling happy about it. No matter even if I have all those seven also. So spiritual is equally important. So for me, having a balance of all this is what is wellness for me.
Sounds good, Gauri. I think that's really well put. A lot of people will resonate to it because many times they're not able to connect one well-being with other.
Yeah.
Perhaps when you see it all puts together, when you bake everything together, you know that you have attained some sort of containment and you're happy in your life, right? Thanks so much, Gauri. We might want to also touch upon what is limiting us to really bring awareness to well-being, right? A lot of people, I see that we need to tell them to seek help. We need to tell them to take some sort of a steps to, rectify something that is happening in their life. Why should we tell them? What are the things that is limiting? So what would you kind of call the blockers of well-being? Gauri, do you want to start first?
Yeah. So there are many, and especially in our society, the number one cause would be taboo. So this topic itself, nobody wants to talk about it. There's stigma attached to it. If you bring forward something, people will victimize you. This is what the general thought process is. Though things are changing. Second is there is no awareness. So if you tell someone I'm not feeling good, the general response would be go take rest and you will be better. But it's not that kind of challenge that would go away just by taking rest. Third is even at our level, we are not aware what exactly is to be done, whom should we meet. Most of the people would not know the difference between psychologist and psychiatrist. So that is the kind of awareness we have. And I realized it when I studied my master's in psychology. And that was the time for awakening for me. I didn't know there are so many streams in psychology, and counseling and psychiatric treatment and psychology are all different things. So that's another thing. Even as a working professional, if I was not aware, I can think about so many people in the world who would not know. Finances, it's extremely expensive to go for such kind of sessions. It is much more expensive than our physical doctors. If you have to go to a physician, it is much cheaper than a counselor or a psychologist. And we also have this block in our mind that nobody can help me. These are such kind of problems that they will never get resolved. So I think these are 4 or 5 important things which we need to really work upon. And what I'm seeing is if there are certain challenges, we should take our kids also to. It's not about having a mental disease, but if they are kind of not focused, because I did some sessions for my daughter with a psychologist, and I realized that she took up meditation at the age of 11. So that is something which we have to really come forward to get rid of these blocks.
Yeah, actually, I resonate with it so much because I know within my workplace also there are several people who tell that I'm suffering from anxiety. What is the best they would do is they would go to a doctor and buy antidepressant tablets and not necessarily want to treat why they are getting the anxiety. They don't want to go to the root cause, but only trying to kind of overall try to manage things, saying okay, time will heal, let me rest. Antidepressants should be able to help. So I think those are the biggest blockers. Very well put, Gauri. So Puneet, what are your thoughts on what could be the blockers?
So I think, see, for me, I would structure the blockers. I think Gauri has covered the individual part of the blockers, right? So see, if I look at it, especially at an organizational context, in 3 broad, I would say, areas or stakeholders of emotional wellness. One is individual, definitely, I think, at the core of everything, because it's about you, right? It's your emotional wellness. And I think Gauri has already covered the kind of stigma, accessibility, availability, affordability, a lot of, I think, inhibitors which are preventing us. So that is one. But if you look at and combine it with the kind of support systems that are around, that are also equally important in terms of the role that it needs to play. Right? So what I mean by that is, let's say the second stakeholder here would be at a team level, for example, right? How empathetic a manager is, how open I am about speaking about it to them, right? Because see, we spend most of our time when we are awake in workplaces, right? So I think, especially if we are talking to this audience, most of the time gets spent with people around, right? So they play or they influence our own thought process very significantly, right? So at a team level, there are two broad, I would say, divisions, right? One is in terms of lack of awareness. Right? Second also is, see, I might have the right intention. Right? Like as a manager, I might want to support, but I don't have enough, whether you call it training, whether you call it skill sets, to also support that, right? Like how many people are comfortable talking to someone with suicidal thoughts? Like how many myths are there around that, right? Like how many of us express our vulnerabilities to others? Like as a manager, or whatever, let's say, as much flat as we are as an organization, there is always a certain side of us that we show in an organizational setting. Right? So that is also equally important. Your peers, your managers, who become your support system as well to encourage you into taking care of emotional wellness. And third is at an organizational level as well. Right? And when I say organization, obviously these two are also part of organization, but certain policies, certain markers that an organization also needs to do to encourage these, right? So it's a top down. See, it can't be an HR's agenda or a wellness team's agenda. It has to be a leadership or a company's agenda. And that is, I think, what we have seen, like having worked with now 200 plus corporates where we work. I think that is a major gap in more than 60% of them. It is an agenda which is a very, very small part of a portfolio of somebody who's driving it. Doesn't get a lot of support, whether it is in the form of focus, communication, or budgets. And as a result, at organizational level policies, like for example, like we were discussing work life, right? Balance versus integration. See certain names like sick leaves, for example. See, why do we call it sick leaves? I am not feeling very productive to be able to come to work, or I'm just feeling overwhelmed. How many of us are comfortable taking leave, stating that reason? I might just say I'm not feeling well. It is assumed I'm not well, right? Which is physical wellness. But how many of us are comfortable in that aspect? Like, for example, recently Razorpay did and took that step also to rename sick leave to, let's say, wellness leaves. Right? Those very subtle changes at an organization level are also equally important to drive this agenda. Right? And combined with obviously leadership focusing on it and consistently communicating it. Right? So this is, I think, for me, along with individual, I do feel these are the other two challenges or stakeholders at which we also need to empower them to look at a holistic development of or holistic upliftment of emotional wellness.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Puneet. I think it's so important for us to change the mindset, right? Not just, I think Gauri really spoke about a lot of issues and concern that we see individually in the society, but then there's a lot of mindset change that is required within the organization as well. So, Gauri, do you see other challenges within the organization? I'm sure you've headed HR in multiple organizations. What has been the challenges in organizations that is really limiting our awareness to well-being, limiting our how we can leverage well-being in the organization?
So Puneet put it very well at the three levels. And what I have personally experienced is in lack of setting the right priority for this particular thing. So people would, when you talk to somebody, they will say, I have so many things to do. It's kind of training, right? Whenever you go for training, there will be something which will always come up. So you have gym membership, but when you look at the records, hardly anybody is using it. The usage is less than 10%. Why is it happening? Because it's not in our priority. Again, because of this psychological thinking, I feel that it comes from our childhood. Because the kind of the way I have been grown up, I was not told to be very active, and we used to do that because we were from smaller places and there was a lot of place to be around and roam around. But there was no discipline that you have to go for a walk or you have to run or you have to do something which is very active physically. And now we don't have any options for our children. So this is how the upbringing has been. It's quite different from what we see in West. They will leave office at 5 and most of them would have some hobbies. So it's like there is a total 360-degree change that is required here. But one of the most important thing that is again coming from individual, because individuals are what making organization. So one is lack of priority. Second is again in terms of budgets. So these programs are expensive, and both in terms of money and time. So then organizations would not be very forthcoming. And third is we cannot bring forward the data. There can be survey, but there's a lot of subjectivity here. There is no way you can actually say that if you spend this much money. I mean, I don't know if Puneet can come up with some metrics, but having a direct correlation 100% is not visible. So you can't actually show that something is happening. These are three things that I'm seeing that these are impediments for wellness at workplace.
Got it, got it, got it. I mean, very well put. I think I'm working with Puneet with Yordos for the last 4 years, very consistently, even back in Capillary and now with Airmeet. But I really see that although we want to leverage Yordos as a platform for wellness to all our employees, we even include our interns, on-demand talent, everybody together, so that everybody reaps the benefit of it. But then I see only about 15% people enrolling for it, right? So I totally see that it's not been prioritized, right? So so what would you kind of suggest organizations and individuals to kind of, what would be your suggestion to really bring this to the forefront? What were the best practices that you would recommend to these people? Gauri, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Oh, you want to ask Puneet? He didn't respond to the last thoughts.
Sure. So I think, see, from a recommendation standpoint, Meena, if I were to think of it, like I think Gauri said, so see, I'm just, I think because of a consultant mindset or a background of mine, I'm just structuring it so that it's easy to explain for me, or I think for me. So see, I just put it in two buckets, right? One, who do not have anything, and second, where it's not achieving the right results or is not implemented in the right way. Right? Now, the first part, I think, like Gauri said, either it is prioritization, budgets, focus. That is one bucket. Second, also, I feel because counseling, and you will also, I think, because you are yourself from psychology background, Gauri, you would see like we all feel we can counsel others. Right? It's like that layman versus a professional. We don't see that difference. Right? And that's why the question of why do I pay so much? Like, we don't have a problem going for team lunches, right? Where we eat that much, I think, which we are, and in one team lunch, for example, the budget is equivalent to a 1 month emotional wellness budget.
Absolutely.
But why is that more important and not, let's say, something which is a very, very core change that we need to bring in culture? It's because we think we can do it. Why do we need someone else to do it, right? Or why do so many things? So, and counseling somehow because of, I would say, like Meena also mentioned, right? You go to a psychiatrist, you take up a medicine, you want an impact right now. I think that, and we are all, I think, doing that because we are now living in a generation where we are brought up with instant satisfaction of every need and demand. You click a button, you get a food. Click a button by 10 you order in the morning. BigBasket will put even that your anything there, from a fruit that you want every day in the morning fresh to a coconut water that you want right in front of your door. I think that instant gratification is what we are all spoiled by, right? And that's why the generational change that has happened has resulted into that second part of, that counseling can be done by others. So we need a solution right now, which takes more priority than, let's say, a counseling or an emotional wellness, which is a longer term kind of a solution, right? So this is the first, I think, bucket. The second, I also feel very, very heavily because, like, if I look at the SHM report, for example, more than 40% employers told they have a wellness intervention in place. Right? But if you look at more than 60 to 80% of them are not achieving the results, and they themselves say there's room for improvement, right? And why is that? Like, for example, you mentioned, like, why is adoption rate slow? Right? The reason for adoption rate to be low itself is very, very inherent in the culture and is a very short, I would say, it's something you need to look at deeper and change as an organization. So that, I think, is a recommendation, especially on the adoption side, because I think the first part is more of a very, very, I think, focus driven and the priority, because there is certain subjectivity involved and certain other things. But adoption is something we should all work towards. Like, if you have, and because that's to the benefit of all of us, right? If we are paying someone, whether it's an organization or an individual who is onboarded for wellness, are we utilizing them right or not? Right? And how that can happen is, for example, an overlap of what I mentioned, right? It has to be a agenda of a top leader. It has to have a right positioning, for example. See, you can't go with a very reactive model of a helpline and say it's a crisis helpline. I don't think any of us would ever connect to a crisis helpline because we don't think we need that. Third, for example, is consistent communication as well, along with the right positioning, consistently communicating. Just putting it in employee handbook or maybe telling once a year doesn't work. Awareness is not there, right? When do I use it? How do I use it? Fourth is modeling. I think this is one of the most important along with communication. Can a manager take a mental health day off and tell their employees, guys, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm just taking a day off today? Will your employees feel more comfortable tomorrow to talk to you? Can a leadership in an all hands discuss and be vulnerable? And vulnerability doesn't mean bringing personal life on the table every time. Can a leader just come and say, I messed up so and so thing, I'm just human, I made this mistake. I hope I'll not make it again. I'll feel more comfortable as an employee. Good. Or as a leader, can I sit across the table with an employee to just listen to them and not fix them? I think we are into problem solving mindset always. Can we take that step back and just be vulnerable to just listen to them without an agenda of solving it or fixing it? So these, I think, are certain 4-5 things which needs to be very, very, I think, coherent to the emotional wellness strategy, which has to be a long-term strategy. Just introducing something and that getting used is, I would say, a byproduct of an inherent change in how the approach is. So this is, I think, I'm sorry for the long answer, but this is how I would try to put the challenges or recommendations.
Totally. Puneet, I think it's just going back on how we self-prescribe for ourselves, right? For example, we know that there is a health insurance available. We know that there are doctor on calls available because most organizations are doing that.
Right.
If I have a headache, I'll just go pick a Dolo. I'm not asking anyone, right? So that self-prescription is something that's really driving us as individuals who who has that pride that why should I go? I can take care of myself. I think that pride also comes from a lot of historical way Indians have been brought up, right? So you don't want to share your problems with others. If you share, you suddenly see yourself dropping in the eyes of the others. You want to, always keep your pride up and say that I'm someone who's super happy. I'm someone who can take care. I always want to take that position that I'm the provider of this family, so I cannot let anybody understand my vulnerability. Right. I think that is something that has really seeped down into a lot of our folks, but not necessarily. If you see other countries, like in the US, going for therapy is seen as a very normal activity. Going for therapy, seeking help, really kind of shows that person's strong enough to understand his problems and go and seek help for it. And they really want to, unlearn what they have and learn new things, how they can cope with their whatever their issues are. So, Gauri, what do you think? What do you think we should be doing? To break that monotony, to break that mindset, and really bring in awareness. So, what would be your best practices that you would share?
Yeah, so Puneet put it very well, and I think that vulnerability goes a very long way in establishing these things. I've seen a CEO who would ask for BMI report for whole organization, and then would actually go on take this step to talk to people who are towards the dangerous end of it, and he'll go speak one-to-one, and the way he used to do things, there was actually a wellness culture. Because we talk about wellness in bits and pieces, but we don't talk about wellness as an overall culture. I've seen even some of the best surveys are yet not focusing so much on wellness. The weightage is not very high when it comes to wellness. And thanks to COVID, yes, there is a lot of focus, but still a long way to go because that has to become an integral part of everything. And I totally agree with you, Puneet, what you said that we think we can counsel. So it's now that I am a master's in psychology, I am told, why don't you counsel? But I can't counsel, right? I am just a master's in psychology. It's like coaching. Earlier, people used to think that coaching can be done by anybody, and anybody who is senior at senior level in organization has seen the world, they will be able to coach. But now we know it's a total different thing, and it's a technology, it's a technique that we need to learn in order to do that. That's very important. And second, Meena, you brilliantly brought out that the way we have been brought up is what makes a total difference. So whatever has already happened, but we have to still make a change. So I remember one of my posts on vulnerability, and somebody, a senior leader, had mentioned there that this is what has happened with me, and this is how I came out of it. He even mentioned about seeking professional help, and that is the kind of courage we need to come forward. It was on social media, it was a post, and he was talking about it. And that is something that is really needed for us to end this stigma and move forward in this direction. But organization level, anything that starts from top works very well, and we have to do that. Because if we see that our CEO himself or herself is not taking care of their needs, and it's also kind of having that balance also. So sometimes they will just boast about it. That, see, I'm not well, or somebody at home is not well, I'm still at work. I mean, what are you trying to say?
I know. Totally resonate with that. I think I can quickly recall this one head of the organization whom we had. His only worry in his entire career was at 9 o'clock in the morning, he would come to the floor and see around. Like, how many people are there? I'm here at 9. Why aren't everybody else there? Right? That was his biggest worry in the entire, building the organization. Not about, how much sales they did or how much revenue they made. It's like, why aren't people there? Why aren't they working?
Yeah.
So totally resonate with that, Gauri. I think, it's so important that we look at these blockers and keep sharing our best practices. But I think one thing that I would also like to understand from your end is what in your organizations have you done? Some of the key initiatives that you have taken up, so that people can learn from your initiatives and perhaps see if it fits within their organizations as well. So Gauri, do you want to share any best practices that you have implemented?
Yeah, I would not like to, would not be able to share anything pertaining to my organization. I'm not authorized to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to share a few best practices, and across the industries, it would be similar.
Mm-hmm.
So one is definitely employee assistant program was going on, and now it is much more better. But it's kind of connecting with people, connecting with their families also. So during this period, I have seen that people not only connected with their team members, because on the social media or on a video call, you would not be able to really understand, really figure out whether the person is actually doing well or not in terms of mental or emotional wellness. So reach out to family members and check out, is there any change in the behavior? I'm sorry, because they are the ones who are seeing this person, this team member of yours every day in, day out. So when you reach out to them, you really try to find out, and it's kind of the best possible information that you will get from there. So this is one best practice I would like to put forward, and it has really worked very well wherever I have seen this example. Because there are two sides to it. One is you feel valued, and when you feel valued, then there is this kind of wellness, well-being in itself, because that impacts you at, there are 8 levels, right? We discussed about it, and it impacts you at various levels. And second, your family also gets to know that there is a challenge. There can be situations where the particular person needs help, and even you might need help. So whenever something like this has brought up to our notice, yes, there is a program, but then people who should use it also. So you have to guide them there. I think this one thing has really worked very well.
Awesome. So Puneet, would you like to add best practices? I mean, I know your dose is helping a lot of organizations, but what are the few unique stuff that you do at your dose itself, if you'd like to share?
Right. So I think, definitely there is no one size fit all. So I like, even in the organizations that we work with, from the stage of the organization, because we are, I would say, a much younger organization. which in itself has a lot of positives and negatives, right? The positive being we can control the culture a lot more than, let's say, someone who might have 10,000 employees. So we can build it bottom up. The negative being, let's say, obviously a lot more ambiguity in terms of a lot of things which are there. You may not have as many processes as are there in a more settled environment. A lot more, I would say, work pressure per se as well, right? Like, for example, see, COVID, fortunately, and touchwood for us, gave us that chance to become a lot more relevant in terms of the work we were doing, right? And at home, obviously, there are so many other challenges that we were all facing, right? And with all those challenges, we actually experienced almost double the number of counseling sessions that were coming. Now, how do you solve that working remotely, facing your own individual challenges? But I think one thing that helps us as an organization ourselves is people. There are people, and we have also started now posting their stories to encourage others as well. They themselves, they all have a story of why they came in here. There are people who themselves have been, I would say, battling and have won against various mental illnesses. There are people who have had certain incidents that they have faced in their life, which has kind of shaped them into what they want to do. So that is definitely one purpose-driven culture that has helped us a lot. Second, I think very important part is, I think the vulnerability part is very important, right? So, and from day one, what we have started doing is be very, very open and transparent, even in terms of financials, how a company is doing. Because at a stage where we are, that's a question that everyone would have, right? Like, are we okay? Are we surviving? Are we not surviving as a company? Like, how are we doing, right? And like, for example, like there was, I would say, just as an incident, like 3 to 3.5 years back, we were at a place where we also had to take certain tough calls, right? That's a part and parcel of life. And for those who stayed back, I think the way we actually told them every month, we used to have all hands, show them exactly how much money we have in the bank, where we are heading towards, what is the plan. We all, I think everyone, it's not just about me, Richa, the founders, everyone for that matter worked so hard. Not even a single person left for that 1 year where we just had 3 months of cash left to a break even that we did just a year after. Right? So that as a journey to us taught us that people will stick with you. Right? So I think that is, I would say, a very, very core part to what we want to do. Like, be very transparent, right? Ask them what they need. Right? Like, do they need those team outings? Do they need something very different? So I think that being vulnerable, being very open, and having that two-way communication is very, very important. I think that is the second, I think, most important learning for us ourselves working here. And third, obviously, I think being a pet person, I think, and Penny, who is our pet, who's there in office always, is a stress buster for everyone, I think. So there are dedicated places in the office where people can just sit with her, pet her, and spend their own time just talking to her. And someone who doesn't judge you and just listens to you. So that's, I would say, a very small addition also to what we have overall as a culture. So I think these are some things personally which have worked. Now, I don't know whether these are best practices for all different types of organization and different stages of organization, but I think these are some things which have worked for us in the past.
Sure. I think, Puneet, those are great points. And I think, having some sort of pet in the office really adds for pet lovers, especially, to kind of, sit next to them, just take care of them. And I think they can forget all of their worries. That's a great initiative. And I think I totally resonate with the openness and transparency that you're bringing across. As in organization, it's so important so that people learn from each other. For example, at Airmeet, right? As simple as something like we wanted to launch uncapped health leaves. That means you can take as many health leaves you want, no questions asked. But then I quickly saw that a lot of people wanted to say that I'm not well, and that's it, right? So we were like, people are not being transparent. Or many women also came forward to me saying, Meena, I think a lot of people are hesitant to tell that maybe I have my periods, I have cramps, and I don't want to come. So that they want to take the health leaves, but they don't want to be open. They don't want to break stigma, right? I think wellness and well-being really is something that really becomes successful when you break that stigma and break the taboo. So use words. It's okay to share, right? So what I had to do is I had to go on some of those channels where we talk about why you're not available, saying, you know what, I'm not available today because I have cramps. I mean, it's okay. I have my periods. I'm not working today. So it was important. I think that is something like when leaders come forward, talk about some things that are taboo is when people are like, it's okay. I think it's this environment encourages us to be open enough and transparent enough, right?
I think just to add there, sorry, Meena, I think
Sure.
interrupting you here. See, as a policy, introducing these things I think are very good. I think at a concept level, these are very, very healthy as well. But at an implementation level is what I have seen it faltering a lot, right? For example, we might want unlimited leaves as a policy because obviously it's a very right intention behind doing it. But is it also aligned with, let's say, the manager at the end of the day? Are we celebrating someone who did not take a single leave in a year? We do that. But then how is it aligning, right? That is one. Second is, let's say, for example, when you are interviewing someone, and maybe in one of the stages of interview, they ask this question, how many leaves are allowed? Does that ring a bell in your mind? Oh, even before getting selected, she's asking this. If those are happening, then inherently there is something which is not aligning between a policy and a policy implementer. I think that is where a lot of gaps also happen, and that's where I think it's tougher. Like I don't have an answer to say how can we make it perfect.
Correct. There's a lot of unconscious bias.
Exactly. So I think that is very, very important. How do we bring policy to success? As well?
I would want to put this question back to you, Puneet. So what would be your suggestion to a lot of leaders, to a lot of managers who kind of look forward to become coaches, right? To look forward to become leaders in the organization. What would be your suggestion for them to cut all these unconscious bias and really look forward for a more transparent, transparent view in the organization to build wellness? What would your suggestions be?
So I think, number one is awareness of these biases, right? It's not possible to remove a bias in one day if you have lived with it for 30 years. Right. Now, but being conscious about it will help you at least take a step back when that starts triggering. Right. So I think that is one part for sure, which is very important and which is possible through training. Right? How do we equip them with the right knowledge and the right skill set? Right. So it's awareness. The next step is knowledge. The next step is skill set. How do we help them take that journey to, I would say, get that skill set again? And all these are learnable, right? All these are not things which don't change over life. So that is one which is very, very important as well, right? How do we help them become conscious about it? And then the whole bias, which is actually an unconscious, start becoming a lot more part of the conscious, and then it changes. It's a step by step, right? And it is journey. And the journey will happen, for example, only if it is important. If I don't have this kind of a training mandated as part of my, let's say, performance, not the performance improvement plan for that, I think, term which is used, but let's say as a performance enhancement or certain mandatory trainings you have to take to become a manager or a leader. Why are these not core parts of most of those?
Totally. I think how to empathize with people while you coach them should become really an integral part of becoming a leader. So what would your suggestions be, Gauri, to HR leaders and especially leadership in organization to, kind of really bring up wellness and cut those unconscious bias?
I think communication would play a good role here, and my suggestion would be over communication here. And it should be consistent, and it should be a lot of communication around the same area, and setting the right examples would be walking the talk would be another thing which would be critical. So if like you cited an excellent example, Meena, that you were going and telling that I am on period and I have cramps, I can't come. So such things leaders have to do, because we discussed already that it has to be a top-down approach. Otherwise, because it's a kind of change. And change management at certain level, yes, we do need buy-ins, but it has to start from top. So that would be a very important area. And second, do we have diverse set of people who have faced this? Do we encourage them to be on board? And then we share their stories. We rather celebrate them. So if there's anybody, do we have those campaigns where we request people to share their stories and they are doing it? That's another thing to take it to the next level, where it's all about having that acceptance. How do you create that platform where people come forward, they say things, and they are not then they are not discriminated either, because that's what is happening in society. The moment you say you had a mental challenge, people will think you are gone already, and you will have a different set of eyes looking at you. So the overall acceptance is most critical aspect here, and that has to come through communication, through exemplification, through stories. I think that would be a very good way to do it. And then sessions like awareness session, like Puneet already mentioned, that and we should have first self awareness, because that's what is mostly missing. We try to look at others, and when it is with us, we just miss it. So I think meditation, mindfulness is a good solution. That should be part of appraisal. How many sessions you did for mindfulness or meditation should be counted.
Sounds good, Gauri. I think, yeah, some of these best practices should become the DNA of the organization. I think that's when, and then you should place it, you should position it in a way that actually impacts people's growth within the organization. That's when they want to prioritize that. For example, Gauri was talking about lack of priority. You need to put it where it becomes priority. So there are some questions here on our questions tab. So Pranita is asking, so regarding the unlimited sick leave, unlimited health leave. So what about the manager's question on or doubt on productivity, right? For example, if people are taking too many leaves, suddenly the manager would spring up and say, you're taking too many unnecessary leaves, that means productivity is lost. What would your approach be here? What would your answer be for this?
Yes, so for me, I have seen multiple things here. It's not only about productivity. At times, so there are certain managers who still want their people, their teams to come forward and say that I want to take a leave. Can I go for a leave? So that authorization is still in place for many managers. We are working with 4 generations these days, but there are people who really want to approve somebody's leave. Now, leave is not to be approved, we fully understand, but so that is one area. So it's not about only productivity, it's about that loss of control. And then there's another aspect to it, that how many leaves are you taking becomes important for other people also. If you take these many leaves, then somebody else would also come forward. So likewise, the whole system goes on. But most importantly, what I have seen is it's about that loss of control, loss of productivity definitely is there. But if there is situation, I think managers should encourage that you should go for leave, take rest, or be with your family if there's a challenge. The kind of walking the talk that we are talking about, this is how it should be done.
Got it. No, there is a loss of productivity if somebody takes many leaves.
Yeah.
But for leaders to be mindful, what do you think that the steps they should be taking to kind of really look at this as a wholesome, activity and not necessarily as loss of productivity? Basically, they have to look at way that they're able to empathize with the employees and not necessarily just force upon them that there's loss of productivity. What would be your suggestion to them?
So for me, it would be about looking at those patterns, because I truly believe that if there are so many sick leave in a team or in an organization, there is sickness in the team or there is sickness in the organization. So that's a clear indicator that you are not doing something right. Look at that, introspect why so many people are. And then if there's a challenge, then definitely somebody would go for multiple leaves. So patterns in terms of if one employee is taking this leave, and generally it happens that it is Friday or Monday that when people apply for a sick leave, and on long weekends or something like that. So if that is a pattern, you should know your people well, right? We always say that knowing your people helps. So it's not only about being bossy, but being with them, understanding them beyond their professional life. And COVID has already given us a good platform or good reason to do this, because the meetings would start with how's your family, how's your kids doing. So it is already there, the line has already been blurred, because especially in banking industry where I come from, the demarcation is so strong that you would not ever ask that how's your spouse, because that's considered as entering into personal space for someone, but that line has already been blurred. So we have to do it now. And if you understand your team, if you understand there are challenges like sickness in system or sick leave, then I think you would be able to manage this very well, because nobody wants to go for leave if they are enjoying their work, and otherwise they are given enough rest.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great point, Gauri. I think we need to introspect, dig deeper, and look into the root cause on why this person's taking multiple leaves. What's the pattern that we are observing? If there's too many patterns, then we need to talk to this person openly, heart to heart, as to what is their real issue. Is it really just the recurring headaches and migraine, or is it really some health issue, or some emotional issue, or some family issue that the person's undergoing, or probably conflict with the manager because that person doesn't want to work?
Is it your issue?
Yes. So it's like we really have to dig deeper and then look at the root cause. If somebody really says that no, this is a recurring thing, then I need a longer leave, I need to take care of family, then we should put some other checks and balances to take care of that as policy. For example, at Airmeet, we have this sabbatical for anything between 4 to 12 weeks, no questions asked. And there's no minimum tenure for you to be in the company to take the sabbatical. If you think there is a pressing need for you to take a break, you can absolutely take that and come back to jobs, right? So like that, what is your Puneet, you may want to add something on how do we manage this? What is your suggestion to managers who feel that suddenly productivity is lost?
So I think that is a tougher part, Meena. Like, see, a policy, like I said, intention is always right, but is it also getting exploited? And that is what we need to be very clear, and that needs to happen from the expectation setting when we are hiring a person as well, right? See, a lot of times, unfortunately, what we do is for the glass doors, for the awards, we try to add certain things and policies and do things which are more jazzy in nature. But is that what will be able to balance the work, which is at the end of the day helping us as a business, as a company to survive and grow? Right? So if that is like, there need, like for example, Gauri said, there are certain patterns, certain benchmarks as an organization I should have. See, if I'm saying there'll be certain number of leaves or certain number of average leaves an employee is taking, even with an unlimited, are they also incorporating that in the planning? See, it can't happen that a manager gets a target from above, which doesn't incorporate that, but then you expect them also to be, I would say, open about all these policies and implementations. So from the expectation setting, from a person you're hiring, this is how we work, this is what is important. Like for example, when we hire, we are very clear about, obviously it would mean a lot of work, right? As a startup, obviously it will be a lot more work than probably a lot more settled company. There'll be certain ambiguity. So you set those expectations when they come, so that it's not a surprise. That is one, prevent those surprises. Second is communicating as well, right? Second is incorporating it in planning in terms of what a manager gets versus what they are also looking for. Otherwise, it will fall off. Right? As a manager, they are the ones who are going to implement it. And third is communication as well. Right? Like if a certain project or a work is assigned, the criticality of it, the criticality of timeline, and why it is very important. Right? And even if after that things are not falling in place, and have those dialogues, try to understand the other's point of view. Don't directly start with a blaming lens. That conversation should never start with a blaming lens. Right? But as an open conversation, as an agendaless conversation, to understand and see if something can be done. If not, can we go back and relook at it? Because client deadlines will not change for these reasons, right? These are internal to a company. So we also now work with organizations, and it's not possible to change a lot of things there. It doesn't reflect right, is how we also look at these things. Right? But how do you incorporate that in the planning to minimize them is very important. Got it. Sounds good, Puneet. I think the crux of this entire psychological view on wellness really comes together in some of the aspects where you can put openness, transparency, and a lot of communication in place to really sort the wellness issues that we are facing today. Thanks a lot for sharing, Gauri and Puneet. I might want to quickly open this conversation for questions, if any. If anybody wants to come to the stage and ask questions, you can raise your hand. There's a raise hand on the right-hand side. If you can click there, you can come onto the stage, anyone from the audience. Or even feel free to put questions. Can we bring Richa to the stage? She is also a co-founder at YOURDOST. Richa, I'm sending you an invite to the stage. You can she's at home. I see. So I'm not sure she'll be able to join or not. Okay. Yeah. as in that's the reason I did not want my nephew to remain quiet during the session and it become a restriction for him, right? See, for me, Saturday means something different from what it means to him as well. So I wanted to have a distinction, and hence I came to office as well.
I see. Okay. All right. I think she's not able to accept the
right. I think
request. No worries at all. All right. Sounds good. Then Punita and Gauri, we had an amazing session. I think there's a lot to learn, and I think this topic that we discussed is so limitless that we can talk about so many other aspects and dimensions. I think today we only spoke about how we are able to really sort and bring awareness within the organization, how we need to ensure some of those mindset blockages are, kind of taken care, and some, a lot of open communication and transparency in the organization is really helping put, wellness as part of the organization culture. So that was great learning. Thanks, Punita and Gauri. It was really nice an hour spent with you. So we'll be actually sharing. So I think there is someone here on the stage, Shravan. Hi, Shravan.
Hi. Is it audible?
I can hear. We can hear you.
Yeah. My question to Gauri is, so see, in the corporates we find wellness, emotional well-being program, or the employee wellness program. So everything is a nice to have product. So nothing has been come to a need, because I feel it is definitely a need, a need of the hour, and in fact it was need prior also. So when do you think this will happen?
So yeah, very pertinent question, Shravan. Thanks for bringing it up. I think it would take some time for us. Definitely, it got accelerated. The importance of it got accelerated because of COVID. But it's not going to happen. Like Puneet mentioned, the usages, or Meena mentioned, it's around 15%. For me, I have seen mostly what I hear from my friends and all is around 10%. So if we look at a good level at 60-70%, it is going to take some time, and it would be an all-round effort from everyone alike, not only the management, but even employees, because they have to actually take the first step, come forward and tell that there is a challenge. Or if they had a challenge and they got benefited by the program, those stories are still unheard of. I have not seen anybody coming forward and saying that this program helped me in such and such a way. And that is where the offtake is still very low, because people don't come to know that. So we also keep it in such a way, right? We don't. I mean, it's kind of not known who's using. We just go by number of hours that were spent by the counselor. And that is why people also don't come to know, and nobody wants to come forward and share their story. So there is a problem at all levels, and in my view, it is going to take some time.
Yeah. So one more question. So what do you think? No, it's for the HRs, in fact. So HRs always thinks it is a tick mark, right? Yeah, this event is done, right? So I think there must be an awareness which has to be built, in the HR circle as well. What are the initiatives which you think would really help, this, particular thing?
Yeah, so this can be like I went for my studies in psychology, and that really helped me. I don't know if you are connected on LinkedIn. If yes, you would see that I'm writing a lot about wellness, because that's one of the most important agenda for me personally. So if we have HRs who have this in their personal agenda, it would be transmitted to the organization. So yeah, you are right. It should be trained. HR should also be trained on these aspects, and we are also part of society, part of ecosystem. So when things change for everyone, yes, we have to lead the change as HR professionals, and we have to first increase our awareness about it. So some of the certifications we can do, we can enhance our knowledge, and yes, change must be led by HR.
Thank you so much, Gauri.
Thanks, Shravan. Thanks for asking this question. I understand most of the time it's tick in your bucket list of to do, or your to-do list that HRs really go about. But the problem is, like Gauri had mentioned earlier, it's about whether employees are able to prioritize wellness, right? Why do you see very less adaptation, very less people participating, as they feel it's not my necessity? I might want to be on a debugging table, talking to other customers or team members rather attending a wellness program. So I think it's about the leaders really bringing it as a priority, and everybody perhaps can follow suit. Thank you, Shrama. Thanks for asking this very important question. So there's one more question here on the questions tab. How to put forward the idea of change in favor of your employees without having employees or upper management become defensive? So Pranita, do you want to come to the stage and elaborate this? Because I think anything that the HR is proposing, if you're really bringing it up with a lot of proper business case and trying to give the the crux of it, the understanding of the facts and figures of it, I think co-founders definitely hear it, buy in, and give a go ahead to take it up. But what do you mean by defensive? What is that defensive aspect that you want to cover? Pranita, do you want to come onto the stage? Yeah. So Pranita has joined. Hi, Pranita. Hello.
Yeah, am I audible?
Very, very feebly, Pranita. You might want to be a little bit more louder.
Okay, am I audible?
No. Are you somewhere outside, perhaps?
Can you hear me?
No, Pranita, I don't think we'll be able to hear you. We are able to hear you. Why don't you put your statement on the chat? And I'll remove Pranita from the stage. So Gauri, Puneet, do you want to give it a shot at answering this question? What could be some things that we can do to ensure that we have the buy-in from founders, from upper management?
Yeah, so I can recall an incident which I consider as a learning, failure and learning. In one of my experiences, I put forward this. So we had a situation where anybody turning up 15 minutes late would be, it's long ago. And there used to be such things in HR's life earlier. So somebody who is delayed by 15 minutes, on third occasion, you will have a half day cut. So I proposed this to my senior management, and I said that this rule should be abolished, and if it cannot be, we should increase it by at least 15 more minutes, right? And what I did wrong was I did not try to understand the kind of business we were in. Because for us, the calls will start at 9:30, should start at 9:30, but people will start calling at 7 a.m. in the morning. So if you say it is 9:30 that your office opens, it was something related to ITES. And if you say that the people are available at 9:30, they have to be at their desk. So most of the times, Pranita, what I have realized in my experiences, when we propose something, we act like we are not a business person. Business acumen is what is missing many a times, and that is what leads to wrong kind of solutions. So this cannot be a solution that you allow them for 15 more minutes, whereas your investor is calling since 7 a.m. in the morning. That would only give you a bad reputation, and they will anyways not be happy. So if you have to propose something, look at the data. Data definitely helps. You will get some information on Google. First of all, you have to learn your business. There is no two way about it. And without understanding your business, whatever you are coming up with, it would be a waste. So that is one. Second is, when you come up with a solution, have more than one mind working on it. Don't think that it's HR agenda and HR should be doing it. Have at least first level of leadership, or if they are not available, second level of leadership, have a discussion with them. Go back to people who are critical about HR. Even that has helped a lot, because they will bring up those pointers which you have not thought about. And that will definitely give you an edge when you are presenting it to senior management. If you can show that this is going to bring good to business, if there's data, definitely excellent. But every time you will not have data, there'll be some subjectivity. So you have to project it in such a way that it helps us It helps us with business, not employee or employer. There is no employee, no management. It's all about the organization. So if you follow these has definitely helped me, and I'm sure it would help you as well. Puneet, you would like to add?
Yeah, I think very similar to what you said, Gauri, because see, I'm just thinking of it from the other side of the table as well right now. See, anything that might come to me, for example, if I place myself as when would I become defensive or may not take that, I'm just thinking it from that lens of what it might mean.
Yes.
So, see, either it may not be very reasonable, right? Which is like you said, like talk to people who are critical about it or understand. For example, let's say a certain time when you're expected to come, it could be because of a certain hurdle or a meeting where a 10-minute late would mean 6 people are waiting for you to come in and join that. Then it may not be very reasonable, right? Even if it is a flexi work policy or a flexi time. So those are like areas where you, I think, try to understand the reason behind it. And second, it, like you said, Gauri, like it has to be a very constructive discussion.
Yes.
A lot of times what happens is these are assumptions that we make, maybe because, and the onus is on both sides. Right? Sometimes we make assumptions, sometimes as a senior management, I think we may not look very approachable at times because of certain reasons.
Absolutely.
Go for a very constructive or assertive discussion, right? And you assume that if I say something, nothing happens, things like that, right? Then it just becomes I would say, a chai sutta conversation per se, or a very unproductive or unconstructive sort of a discussion, which is not good for anyone. So I think this is.
So Pranita, you heard from. Sorry, I thought you were done. Yes, I was saying, Pranita, have it from both sides. How to present and how to get it approved. Meena, you want to add something?
I think I totally kind of second your thoughts. It's about presenting data to people. So whenever I have to suggest something, I'm looking at how would it affect and impact the organization or the people, right? So you have to really present one of the impacts, and you have to definitely show some ROI. ROI doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be, you can at least show what is the improvement in the ENPS, what's the improvement in the satisfaction levels of employees, what is the improvement in, some people's productivity efficiency in the organization. So some of these subjective matters also put it in a way that you're showing some sort of an ROI, and I'm sure your leadership, your upper management are there to kind of buy in. And then what is the psychology of any leaders, right? For them, they want to know that there are not just HR, but a set of people are agreeing to it.
Yes.
So there comes Gauri's point where get buy-ins from your next level leadership. They might want to come and say that, what, we collectively agree to this. That means management will also say, okay, now if everybody agrees to it, let's do it. So those are things that those are best practices that I follow, and I'm sure a lot of HR will be able to benefit out of it. All right, thank you so much. I think we've overshot on time. Thanks everyone. I think great session, a lot of good questions. Thanks Gauri and Puneet for really adding a lot of value to this conversation. Looking forward to have multiple more events with you, because I'm sure this topic of psychology and wellness and everything in between has so much to cover, and this one session is not enough. But definitely great learning. Thank you so much, and would just wish everyone to have a great weekend. Thanks, and bye bye.
Thank you so much, Meena. It was a pleasure being here and having this discussion. Thank you so much, Puneet.
Thank you so much, Gauri. Thank you, Meena.
Yeah, good day. Bye. Have a nice weekend.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.